All nations, it is a real joy to be with you this morning. My name is Iain Hesketh and I'm the International Missions Director for Elam UK. Now, what some of you might not know is that I spent 4 years in Reading working with Pastor Billy as his assistant. I had responsibility for the youth work and various other things, and it was just such a fun period of my life. It was a great season. Halfway through that, I got married to Rachel. Rachel joined me in Reading, and we together just had a great season of life with you, and we look back with great fondness and great memories of what that time has meant to us, and the way that Pastor Billy invested in me and us as a couple and released me into various kinds of ministry. I don't think I would be you certainly wouldn't be the person that I am today without just Billy's investment and his ability to release and his ability to mentor, ability to say some stuff that needed to be said at the right time in the right way. And so, Bill, I'm always just look back with great appreciation for the way that you've invested in me over the years. And it's a joy, really, to be able to, like I say, to talk with you today. We'd have much preferred to have been with you present physically in the same building, same room, same time. That would have been awesome. We would have just loved that to have been with you. But that's not to be. And so today, Pastor Billy's asked me to just share a message with you. It's Father's Day. I'm going to speak to fathers in some degree, but I think this is going to be a message that we can all hold on to during this season of vast uncertainty. We're just really unsure as what might happen. Things seem to change by the day. But we are where we are. But before I jump into the text, I'm going to be in John 6, by the way, verse 16 to 21. If you want to find that now before we dive in there. Just to give a little bit of an update as to where we're at in terms of Elam Missions and my role. So my role means that I get to connect with churches in the UK and promote the work of Elam Missions and tell the stories of what God is doing, which is a great joy. The other part of that is I get to work with our existing missionaries who are in over 50 nations of the world. We have 71 missionaries. Some of those are UK based, and we'll spend periods of time out in the countries that they're connected with, working and developing the work there alongside our global partners. The other thing I've mentioned there is global partners. We have just under 100 global partners on 5 different continents. And so we are working with our partners to make sure that they're equipped, encouraged, and the mission together, Elam UK and Elam World, joining forces to see the mission of Jesus advance. And so I'm really excited about the future work of Elam Missions. In our 100-year history, we have sent over 200 long-term missionaries in our history, around that, maybe slightly more, maybe less. It is often difficult with some of the old records, but that's the kind of figure that we're looking at. And so I'm not sure whether to share this publicly or not, but my dream, my desire at this moment in time is that I hope, and it will be for the next 10 years, if God willing, I'm in this role for 10 years. But the next 10 years, this decade of advance of the 4 priorities of our movement, of disciples, churches, leaders and nations. Within the Reaching Nations mandate, I would love us to pioneer into more new nations. I would love to see us send more missionaries in the next 10 years than we ever have done in our 100 years. Now that clearly is going to mean some structural changes, some changes to the way that we do things, but can you imagine sending missionaries from everywhere to everywhere, not just from the UK overseas to do the cross-cultural work, but sending missionaries from Paraguay to Honduras, or Honduras to Peru, or from Peru to Colombia, or from Togo into Botswana, whatever it might look like. Can you imagine those moments where we are able to gather collectively as Elam family to send people across the globe to take the good news of Jesus, to plant churches, to plant gospel communities that see lives transformed and changed by Jesus, and serve their locations? That's what's in my heart. That's what I'm seeing. That's what I'm sensing us stepping into as Elim Missions, and so I invite you to join the journey. And I want to say that as a church, I'm so thankful that you get behind Elim Missions. You have done for years, not just because I'm in the role. Yeah, you're behind Elim Missions because your pastor is behind Elim Missions. He's a missions man. He's known as a missions man. He loves mission. He loves God. He loves communicating the good news to people and training leaders. And so just the heart of your church to release Billy to do the things that God has called him to do is incredible, and so we're really thankful that we're in this together. And so there's just some update really as to what's going on, the future of missions, the way that I see my role. It's fun being able to connect with people from all over the world and talk about Jesus and think about discipleship strategies and leadership strategies. And so with that in mind, how do we lead and navigate through a season that has turned many of our plans upside down? I think about that future for Elim Missions. I'm going, well, what does that look like, Jesus, in the current climate? We can't be certain that we're going to be able to send people into other nations. What if borders remain closed for a long period of time? What does that look like? For some of you, it's not whether you can get into another country, it's whether you can get into your office or your workplace, or whether you're even going to have a job. I think there's so many complexities about our day that are really challenging, that can cause us all kinds of anxiety and worry and concern, and in many respects rightfully so. But how do we navigate that? Guys, how do we navigate that? How do we help the people around us navigate that? Because I think there's a responsibility for not just for guys, but for us as God's people to demonstrate something of calmness and trust and hope in the midst of a storm. It seems cliche almost to talk about the last 3 months of this storm that has erupted, that came for many out of nowhere. We didn't really see what was going to happen, but it's here, and it seems like we're still in it. So how can we trust Jesus when things seem so uncertain? Will we get through to the other side? I'd like to suggest that we will get through to the other side. And I think the verses that I've chosen to speak from today speak into our current circumstances and hope for the future. So would you turn with me to John chapter 6 and verse 16 through to 21, and I'll just read these verses to you. When evening came, his disciples went down to the sea, got into a boat, and started across the sea to Capernaum. Darkness had already set in, but Jesus had not yet come to them. A high wind rose and the sea began to churn, and after they had rowed about 3 or 4 miles, they saw Jesus walking on the sea. He was coming near the boat, and they were afraid. But he said to them, "It is I, do not be afraid." Then they were willing to take him on board. At once the boat was at the shore where they were heading. I love John's Gospel. Every time I read it, there is something fresh that I see and experience. There's the depth of layers to his Gospel. If you've never read it, I just encourage you to do so. But here we have Jesus having been on the hillside in the preceding chapters, feeding the 5,000. He'd given the bread to the disciples. They'd been distributed out. The people had wanted to make him king because they realized he was a prophet, although it wasn't a full picture. Jesus wasn't going to be manipulated into something that wasn't at the right time and wasn't fully understood. It wasn't their position. He was submitted to the will of the Father, and so he withdrew and hid from public view. And so at darkness and late at night, the disciples are rowing to the other side of the lake. They're 3-4 miles in. That must have been hard work. That's a big challenge. Jesus comes down. He's walking on the water. And he's walking towards them, and they're afraid, they're frightened. It's like, what's going on? The sea and the wind, they're churning up. It's a ghost. I don't know who that is. It's like, can you imagine the panic in their hearts and minds? And then Jesus speaks. He says, "It is I, do not be afraid." In the midst of the storm, in the midst of the panic, the words of Jesus have burst through and break forth. And they hear his voice, they recognize it's him, and they pull him. It comes into the boat, and immediately they're at the other side. And this is incredible. We'll dig into that in the next part of this talk. but there's some things that we can recognize that there's some parallels going on. That's what I mean. The depth of John's writing is that he often parallels it with events of the old ancient stories. And so when Jesus says, it is I, it's not just, it's me, guys. There is good suggestion within the exegesis of this text to recognize that Jesus is the great I am. He is using the same words, the same tone, the same context that he as he revealed himself to Moses in Exodus chapter 3, where he reveals himself as I am who I am. It's that sense that Jesus is carrying. It is I, the great I am. And so Jesus reveals himself in increasing measure to the disciples. And that's what I find about Jesus, that it isn't just in the nice parts of life where he reveals himself to us, but actually it's pretty much all. I find that in the darkest times, the hardest times, the storm times, where Jesus speaks and we realize who he is. Doesn't mean to say he can't speak in the calm, in the stillness, but I think there's something special when he speaks in the storm. There are three things that I want to draw out of this passage that I hope will be helpful for you in the midst of this global pandemic that is causing great uncertainty in our times, because we can trust him. This is the truth, and this is the reality of Jesus is who he says he is, and he really can do the things that we've seen him do in these few verses. Then we can absolutely trust the one who's able to walk on water, who is able to calm the sea, and is able to take the disciples over to the other side immediately. That's kind of impressive. That's kind of indicating that this Jesus is not just a prophet. He's not just a good teacher, but he's God. He is the great I am. He is incomparable. There is nobody you can compare him to. He is absolutely unique. This Jesus who walks, at this point was walking the face of the earth, but who holds all things in his hands. And so that's why I say that in the face of what we're currently going through, there are reasons why I believe we can trust Jesus in the midst of the storm. And so I'm going to 3 P's, and by the way, it's not pineapple. It's 3 P's, and these are the 3 P's: presence, power, and purpose. So first and foremost is the presence of Jesus. Why I think we can have peace in the storm and calmness in the storm, trust in the storm, is because we can know the presence of Jesus in the midst of the storm. Now, there are other accounts where Mark records that Jesus speaks and the storm quietens down. And here, John records that the boat gets to the other side. It's quieted down and the boat gets to the other side. And so there's this ability of Jesus in the middle of the storm to bring peace and to get us through. The thing is, like, the presence of Jesus in the midst of the storm is far greater than the storm itself. The storm may carry on for a while. Those disciples were in the middle of these swirling winds, the high winds, the sea crashing over. I guess it was a tricky moment for them. And yet when Jesus came into the middle, they didn't understand that Jesus was there. They didn't understand who Jesus was, They were frightened, but when he spoke, something happened in them. And it was the presence of Jesus that changes everything. And so the invitation to you and I today is not to try and navigate this on our own, but allow Jesus into the boat. Don't be afraid that he's far off, but he's drawing near. And as he draws near to you, you draw near to him and allow him to take charge of your life, your boat. Allow him to lead you and guide you through to the other side, because that's the promise, by the way, that we will get through this. We might not get through it unscathed, but we will get through this. That is the promise, because our hope is not simply in what is found, but that which is to come. And so Jesus will bring us through, and through it he will shape us. Can you imagine what the stories the disciples were able to tell as a result of this? The encounter with Jesus. Do you imagine them telling that to their kids and their family and their friends in their sermons? Do you know what? We were on the lake this time, and Jesus became walking out, and we were frightened, and he spoke and it changed. Can you imagine the story? You see, and I think in this time God's giving us a story to be able to tell and to communicate. Oh, do you remember when coronavirus was a thing? Do you remember when that pandemic hit us? Do you remember how faithful God was? Do you remember his presence leading us and guiding us and shaping us and taking us through? You can fill in the blanks and the details of the story, but if it's true for me, I'm sure it's true for you. We can know the presence of Jesus in the midst of the storm. The second P is this, the power of Jesus. As Mel mentioned, Mark talks about Jesus calming the storm. Here Jesus is revealed by John as taking the disciples in the boat immediately to the other side. I mean, that would have been fun, don't you think? I mean, I love speed. I love going fast. I love that adrenaline rush. If I could drive fast cars for a living, that would be the dream. Could you imagine just what would have been in that moment, the disciple in the boat, and immediately you're at the other side and you're thinking, what happened there? Like, the power of Jesus to do the miraculous is incredible, and so that's why I think we can trust Jesus in the middle of the storm, because he's able to do the miraculous. I've heard stories just recently of Jesus doing the miraculous in ways that you wouldn't even begin to imagine or dream. Stories of provision, stories of miracle breakthrough, stories of salvation. Jesus is all powerful, and he's able to break through even the darkest of night with his glorious light, because that's who he is. He is the Prince of Peace. He is the Prince. He is light itself. As John tells us, he doesn't just give light and distribute light. He is light, so his life shines in the darkness. He is reigning over all things. If he's able to get a boat from the middle of a sea to the other side of the lake and of the sea in an instant, he's able to deliver you, and he's able to deliver me, and we can trust him. And so that's the second thing, the power of Jesus. He is all powerful. There is nobody like him. And if that's true, it's true of him, then how do you and I get to live in response to his power? I would suggest that we get to trust him fully with our life. Third P is this, the purpose of God. So we can know the purpose of God. They got to the other side. And so this time of life, this season of life, this moment is a moment in time. Sure, it's a seismic shift in the way that we've done life and the way that we've done church and the way that we think about mission. But the mission hasn't changed. The outworking of mission might have changed. The outworking of how we do some stuff has certainly changed. But we can know an assurance and a hope in the middle of the storm, because we know the purpose for which we've been created. See, you and I have been created not simply to enjoy the temporal, the things that we see, the things that we've enjoyed even in this moment. You and I, if you're a follower of Jesus, we've been invited to the God life. We've been invited to lay our life down and our desires and our will and our purpose down, the plans that we've made for our own life, to pick up his. Now, it might be that your location doesn't change. You may never go off and do cross-cultural mission, but the priorities of your life begin to shift, because if you see yourself not simply as a banker who happens to be a Christian, but as a Christian who just so happens to be a banker, it changes your perspective. If you happen to see yourself as a factory worker who just so happens to be a Christian, then it means that you go in and that's your identity as a factory worker. No, you're not. You're a child of God. You're a daughter of God. You're somebody who's been called out by God. You're a Christian. You're a follower of Christ. You're a child of God who just so happens to be a factory worker. And see, this is a game changer when we think about our purpose. Because if our purpose is dependent on our circumstances, we're going to be really uncertain when circumstances change. But if our identity and our purpose is wrapped up in who God has called us to be, then we can have certainty in them, even in the midst of uncertain times. And so for you today, wherever it is that you find yourself, understand this, that you can know the presence of Jesus in the midst of the storm. You can know the power of Jesus at work in your life in the midst of the storm. And you can know purpose of Jesus even when things seem uncertain. That's why I think we can be a radiant light to a world that is gripped with uncertainty, a world that it doesn't know what is true and what isn't true, where we can speak life and truth in Jesus' name, and be a calm presence in the midst of the storm. Not because we have it nailed, but because we follow the one who does have it nailed, and who is all powerful and reigns over all things. So I thank you for listening. I pray God's blessing to you, on you, and to you, and through you. May you know his provision, his power, his protection. May you know his grace abounding to you. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.